Jane, you're on mute if you're talking.
I was like, really talking. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our exclusive members only webinar. If you have not, please take the chance to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you are logging in from. My name is Jane Lee, as Jess has said, and I'm the Director of Development with PennFuture. I would like to thank each and every one of you for all of your support, and we are pleased to say that 100% of your funding helps advance the mission at PennFuture. We are so excited to share with you the great things that are upcoming and happening with PennFuture. So without further delay, I would like to introduce Patrick McDonnell, President and CEO of PennFuture.
Good evening, everybody. Great to see everyone. See some of our board members, some of our great volunteers, and of course, our members in the attendee list. So just thrilled to be here with everyone. Uh, to start, just wanted to highlight the mission of the organization. And for those who may have seen mission in the past, this is a relatively new mission. We just finished a strategic planning process with our staff and our board. And what you see in front of you is the end result of that. Really focusing on making sure we're creating that equitable job creating economy, advancing clean water, advancing clean air, pure water, and climate change solutions through all of the tools that we have here. And we are nonpartisan, we are statewide, and we do the work in a variety of ways, as you can see on the slide. Next slide, please. So before we get into the program proper, just wanted to highlight, obviously this week was the announcement of the governor's budget. And one of the, I think, the key components of that from our perspective was the announcement of the Lightning Plan. We issued this statement that you see on the screen that's available on Facebook, on Instagram, on the variety of social media that we participate in. But I think the key thing to realize is for us, as we are working through the legislature, as we are working through our comm strategy, this is a starting point, and we want to make sure that we are continuing to push to make sure the Lightning Plan, should it come to fruition, is prioritizing renewable energy and storage, is increasing that cap on Act 129 to make sure there's more money available for consumers to put energy efficiency in place. We want to make sure this is as clean as possible, recognizing that we're often dealing with fossil fuel interests as we make our case in the state capitol. So lots more to come on this. We're still diving into some of the details of the various flows of money in the agencies and pieces like that. So again, stay tuned on our social media channels, your emails, etc. Next slide, please. And for those who were able to join us, just want to thank you all. It's been 25 years. We celebrated 25 years last year of PennFuture. From a humble beginnings back in 1998, and I can still remember being in some meetings with our first president and founder, John Hanger, back when I was in my DEP days. Amazing how far we've come, as you'll see in the coming slides. Next slide, please. Just want to give a sense of where we are physically located. We have offices. Our main office is here in Harrisburg, where I'm coming to you from. But we also have offices in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Stroudsburg, and Erie. Very important for us to be in the areas of the state where we can have most impact, make sure we are connecting with communities. And again, you'll hear more about that work in a few moments. Next slide, please. So here's the management team, and you'll be hearing from some other members of the team over the course of the next 50 minutes or so. Matt Stepp is our Executive Vice President, Chief of Staff. Abby Jones, who's with us tonight, is our Vice President of Legal and Policy. Rob Altenberg, Senior Director of Energy and Climate, and knows more about air and energy than just about anybody I know. Jane Lee's already introduced herself, in charge of development. Adam Nagel leads our small but mighty Ledge Affairs team. Annie Regan, who you'll be hearing from in a moment, directs our campaigns. Lee Martinez is Director of Communications, and Jess Caderet directs the civic engagement work. And again, I'll say a bit about some of this in a moment. So as we think about how we are addressing climate change, pure water, clean air in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, one of the starting points is getting past some basic things I think have been ingrained in all of us over time that make us focus on fragmented efforts first instead of systemic change. So we all remember early on it was if you do recycling, that's your duty, and that's kind of the end of it. Um, if you make sure you're turning off your lights, puts a lot of individual responsibility and on very specific tasks. The current version of that, just to give an example, is on an issue like solar, where we're not actually talking in the legislature about solar or about energy policy. We're talking about should there be bonding on certain solar fields, or should there be an end of life process, or where should they be located, as opposed to having a solar policy or an energy policy that really speaks to the moment we're in terms of energy, in terms of climate change, in terms of air quality, and even water impacts. A second thing is focused on those root causes. We've heard for years economic growth and energy consumption fundamentally at odds with one another. Well, we now live in a world where solar is cheap, can be plentiful with the right policy options, can provide good jobs. We're at a moment where the technology and the opportunities are all there to make sure that energy consumption and economic growth are moving hand in hand and are not fighting one another. And then underestimating the importance of scale. There's often an effort to make sure as we are moving forward on these things that we underestimate the scale of the issues or the scale of what a particular technology can do. Again, I encountered this when I was at DEP. One of the first things we had to deal with was Chesapeake Bay watershed implementation. And the reality of that was we looked at the numbers they had come up with in the last plan, and they were physically impossible. So making sure we're speaking to who's got to do the work and how big is the problem, how big are the opportunities for us to address. Next slide, please. So here's the solution, right? We are focused on policies and regulations to make sure we are making long-term progress in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And this is the place to get it done. PennFuture, with all of your help and support, this is the place where we can best get this work done in the Commonwealth. Next slide, please. So here's what we like to call our magic, our secret sauce in the organization. And you'll be hard pressed to find anything like this in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We are an environmental policy team that is working on the campaign side, making sure we are focused on air, water, climate, sustainable economic development, through legal and policy, making sure we're in courtrooms, making sure we're commenting on state and federal regulation. A legislative team. I always like to point out when I first started here at PennFuture, one of the things I was told is the environmental movement had 3 people that were regularly working in the Capitol. Well, today, between us and our strategic partner, Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania, we have 4 by ourselves. Again, I say we have a small but mighty team. It's the largest in the state in terms of people actively working on these issues. And then our civic engagement team, which Jess leads, they are on the ground making sure they are connecting with communities, talking with people, understanding what their problems are so we can bring that forward, and bringing the policy solutions down. And like one of my favorite things is just us bringing our members in to meet with their legislator to tell them what is important to them, what is on their mind. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to Annie Regan, our campaigns director, for this next bit. Annie.
Thanks so much, Pat. Thanks everybody for being here. I'm the campaigns director. You might, oh, the pool is already launched. Okay, let's get into it. Let's take a moment to fill out, which you should see the pop-up on the screen. The ways we've structured our campaigns that I'll get into in a minute and plan to tackle the environmental issues ahead of us. And then we'll share the results of the poll you're taking in a moment, which really helps us inform the kind of work that folks are interested in, where we need to focus more on education. And stay tuned for a more in-depth membership survey that you will receive after this webinar shortly. So we'll just take a few more seconds and kind of see where we are on that. We'll give 5 more seconds. All right, I think the movement has stopped. I guess I click stop sharing. All right, a pretty even amount for each category, but I see holding polluters accountable is number one. And fortunately for us, that's a big part of our job and we're pretty good at it. So that's exciting to see. But we'll definitely we'll keep in touch with these results to kind of inform our work. So thanks for engaging. All right, next slide. So yeah, I'm the director of campaigns, Annie Regan. You might have seen my name. When I usually meet folks in person, they recognize my name from a bunch of emails that I send out. So apologies in advance, and I'll probably send out more. But I oversee the 3 umbrella campaigns that we've structured in our new way of planning our strategic plan. A lot of this work we have already done, but internalizing it in a different way to kind of really have that team structure. And we've really seen a difference with this new structure for the campaign. So we have our clean air work, oh, if you could go back, thanks, the clean energy and decarbonization, and our clean water. A lot of this, of course, is focused on state policy and advocacy work, but we do also work with groups on federal issues and with our amazing civic engagement team touch on some local issues as well, but mostly state policy and advocacy work. Next slide, please. And so for this, I'm really excited to talk about. Folks might be familiar with some of the stuff that we have already put out, but something new that we are really trying this year is and going forward within our work, embedded, oh, so sorry about that. All good. Embedded into each of our campaigns is a sustainable economic development lens. And so something that we keep stressing over and over again is economic development policy is environmental policy. This creates policy that protects and improves the health of the environment while also enhancing quality of life for workers and communities. There is an unfair narrative that we have to choose one or the other. And with our research and just the way that we've seen the economic boom and bust cycle, has to be a more sustainable way that we know works. Unfortunately, our Donna Kohut, who was our policy manager for sustainable economics, couldn't be here, but I did provide her email. She is a wonderful resource. She's been doing a lot of the research, and we've done some presentations on this work. But if folks have questions on this topic or want her to do a presentation, she's a fantastic presenter. Please, please, please reach out. We are new to this work, so we want to make sure we're in the right places and talking to the right people and making sure that we can provide the resources that are needed to kind of showcase this work. And something that we're really proud of um, or last year is putting out a sign-on letter that I think if you were one of our partners, you might have signed on to, is our Sustainable Economic Development Letter. We had over 100 businesses, religious organizations, community leaders, elected officials, and environmental advocates across Pennsylvania sign a letter addressed to Governor Shapiro expressing concern that his 10-year strategic plan for economic development in PA failed to prioritize sustainable industries and instead doubled down on fossil fuels. And we were really excited to see the momentum there. We felt like this was something a lot of groups were thinking about, and it was PennFuture's opportunity to make sure we led that advocacy work and to really call out to it. That really started this work. And a few months later, I actually forget the exact timeline, we put out our report, Economic Policy is Environmental Policy, pictured here on this slide, prioritizing environmental progress in Pennsylvania's Department of Community and Economic Development. I believe Natalie will drop the links in the chat to both the sign-on letter and Donna's report, aiming to redirect Pennsylvania's financial resources from fossil fuels towards decarbonization and economic diversification. You will hear those terms over and over again. PennFuture is trying to really harp on that message and really showcase why this is so important to hammer down on. So really excited for this work. You'll see it embedded into our clean air, energy, and water campaign. So more to come on that. Next slide, please. Also wanted to showcase before I get into the three different campaign buckets that we are really prioritizing an environmental justice lens. It's critical to view the issues and campaigns we work on. Environmental justice is defined as just treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of income, race, color, national origin, tribal affiliation, or disability, and agency decision-making that affect human health and the environment. Unfortunately, we know that studies show, due to a history of racist and prejudiced actions, often low-income, Black and Brown communities are disproportionately negatively affected by the issues we face. For example, when there is air pollution, we all suffer since air knows no boundaries, but that pollution often originates in areas that are often communities of color and overburdened by industrial facilities, facing the brunt of that pollution. That's why all of our advocacy needs to center the equity and justice implications of the environmental issues we face, the solutions we propose, and the advocacy we engage in. It's important to ensure that we're centering those suffering the most and most affected. So leading this effort, we really want to focus on those two lenses into each of their campaigns. And I will go to the next slide to kind of showcase what those look like. Our first one is our Clean Air campaign, and I'm excited to say that we are going to be hiring a campaign manager soon. So in a few weeks, you might see a job application that we'll share in our socials and probably email. So please, if you know a good candidate, please share it once it's live. But our campaign goal here is reducing air pollution in environmental justice communities. There's some of our team members on the top. So this includes, and this work right now is really focused on the Mon Valley area right now, but we're hoping to expand our air quality work throughout the state. So folks might be aware of U.S. Steel's Clairton Coke Works, the largest coke plant in North America and the biggest polluter in Allegheny County. Making sure that we work with the Allegheny County Health Department to enforce stricter regulations, increased fee permitting, etc., is a current campaign that we are working on. And making sure that we watchdog new non-green industry major sources of pollution in the Mon Valley, strengthen and protect air quality regulations, both on the federal EPA regulations and on the state level as well. And we're also researching and developing new tactics to reduce air pollution for EJ communities as well. So we've been in this area I've been with PennFuture for almost 10 years, so we've been in that area working for a long time. And so we're going to commit to that until we see a lot more progress and a lot more work has to be done. So we're excited to continue that work. Next slide, please. And this is my campaign that I lead. Our campaign goal here is to mitigate the impacts of climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, building resilient communities, and forging a just and equitable clean energy economy. And so we did the objectives for this campaign goal into dividing into three different sectors with the electrical generation sector, which is 30% of Pennsylvania's emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, transportation sector, and industrial sector. And so you will see legislation that we've been advocating for, like solar for schools, and we're still advocating for community solar. Something that is also a big priority with this campaign is addressing our high electric bills and really simplifying that complex process of why our electric bills are high. It's a little bit more complicated than folks kind of point to. And so we're really going to be breaking that up. And please stay tuned for a webinar next month on that. Solar siting, streamlining siting and land use issues while encouraging conservation, making sure if we're doing solar, we're doing it right, and diversifying Pennsylvania's generation to keep up with public demand for more renewable energy options, creating more affordable and reliable electricity through sources like solar and wind, and to keep Pennsylvania competitive in growing jobs and a clean energy economy. Next slide, please. And then our last campaign here, and we are also hiring, as folks might have known, Jenny Thompson was our water campaign manager, but she is sadly, but we're very happy for her moving on to another organization. Tomorrow is her last day. She was leading this wonderful work. And so our campaign goal here is strengthening the climate resiliency of statewide water resources and watershed communities by prioritizing nature-based solutions, establishing equitable water infrastructure funding, and protecting water quality from increasing pollution and degradation. So a lot of this campaign structures are expanding protections for through statewide through policy, or I'm sorry, expanding buffer protections. And so riparian buffers, I think Natalie put the link in the chat. If you're not sure what that is, you can learn more about that there through a blog that PennFuture put together. We're also advocating for critical stormwater infrastructure programs, particularly through the Clean Streams Fund, and working with coalitions like the Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed, the Choose Clean Water Coalition, and Healing Our Waters Great Lakes Coalition. So that's a lot of information I just kind of put towards you. So if you have any questions, please put it in the chat, and I will also put my email in the chat if you have questions for any of these different areas, and we can follow up and get you the information. If you have a question on it, we probably have a blog or resource on it that we put together, so we're happy to share that. All right, I think I'm at time, so I'm going to pass it over to Abby, who is our Vice President of Legal and Policy.
Great. Thanks, Annie. And it's really so great to be with everybody tonight. I'm so excited to tell you about our amazing legal team and walk you through all the impactful work that we've done over just the past year. So first, we're going to quickly meet the team. We have 6 team members who help with policy and regulatory advocacy for PennFuture, including 4 attorneys who litigate our cases and engage in legal advocacy. Those litigators include Jessica O'Neill, who's our managing attorney for litigation, Angela Kilbert, who is our senior attorney, Emma Bast, a staff attorney, and Bridget Meyer, our other staff attorney. Now, our legal and policy team is deeply engaged in all of the campaigns that Annie spoke about. And so we'll kind of, as we work through our litigation, I'm going to show you how we are making impacts in each of those campaigns. Next slide. Great. So we're going to drill down a little bit to see what this small but mighty team is doing on the litigation front. With our 4 attorneys, we won 6 cases in 2024 alone. We currently have 13 active cases, active litigation matters on our docket, and we anticipate anywhere from 1 to 3 new cases each year. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's closer to the 1 to 2 number, but just know that these cases sometimes take years, 1 to 2 years to reach a decision on the merits, not including appeals. So these things are ongoing over years. And since we've revamped our legal and policy team in 2020, we've had a nearly 70% success rate in our cases. And I think this goes to show not only that we are picking smart and thoughtful cases, but that the team does amazing lawyers. They're just amazing lawyers. I can't speak highly enough of them. So one thing that our team takes pride in is that our litigation makes a real impact, not only on the communities directly impacted by a facility or regulation, but many times our wins create bigger changes in legal precedent or laws across the state. So I know Natalie put a list of the press releases for our victories in the chat. They're all up on our website if you want to go take a look and dig into any of these cases. But in 2024, the impact of our litigation included stronger air quality permit conditions in the Mon Valley, protecting special protection headwaters from development, and supporting stronger legal protections in the Poconos, stopping water pollution and getting over $150,000 to support community projects in Philadelphia, and confirming the right of PennFuture and other environmental advocates to fight before Pennsylvania courts and our Environmental Hearing Board, which is the judicial arm that oversees all of DEP's permits and decisions. And this includes representing the rights of members such as yourselves as beneficiaries under Article 1, Section 27 of Pennsylvania's Constitution, known as the Environmental Rights Amendment. And to be clear, none of PennFuture's legal work would be possible without the support of our membership. And so I'd like to take a moment just to share my deep gratitude for each and every one of you here with us tonight, and the many others who could not join us. You are an invaluable part of these victories. And so speaking of the ERA, next slide, please. Just like we include sustainable economic development and environmental justice lenses in our campaign work, the legal team purposefully engages in all of our work through an environmental rights amendment lens. To learn more about our ERA, Environmental Rights Amendment work, I encourage you to visit our website that Natalie's going to put links to in the chat. And there we have information about the history of the ERA, summaries of recent case law decisions that are important. We have a policy brief that I highly encourage you to walk through to understand the history, the meaning, and highlighting, as you can see in this slide, the work that our legal team is doing to strengthen and defend our Environmental Rights Amendment and our rights thereunder. So I am extremely proud of the work that our team does to protect and strengthen our constitutional environmental rights. And I'd like to take a minute just to give a major shout out to our managing attorney for litigation, Jessica O'Neill, and all the work that she's done over the past, I think, 3 or 4 years that she's been here in creating meaningful changes and decisions on the Environmental Rights Amendment and creating a legal ERA strike force, as we like to call it, that brings together partners and legal scholars in our work. We have made huge strides thanks to her insightful and powerful legal strategy on the Environmental Rights Amendment. And so looking forward, to end my spotlight on PennFuture's team, I'm going to give a little teaser for something that I've been working to establish for some time now. It's called PennFuture's Legal Environmental Advocacy Fund, or LEAF. So be on the lookout for more information from Pat, Jane, and myself over the coming months to learn about how you can support our legal work directly so that we can do more to protect Pennsylvania's environment and community health from toxic polluters and bad laws. So thank you for allowing me to quickly run through tonight's spotlight on PennFuture's legal wins and updates from 2024. I'd like to now turn it back over to Jane to bring it home and talk about the larger impact that your support of PennFuture has on the amazing work of all of our teams. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. I am just so excited to see this slide because it shows many of the accomplishments that we have done. And James Looney, the development coordinator, and I started this past summer after 2 successful in-person 25-year events. So we are so excited about that. But to follow up and to piggyback on that, you probably have received several emails, one in the fall that is really tailored to you. So if you lived in Pittsburgh, you saw things that PennFuture was doing in Pittsburgh. If you lived in the Poconos, you saw things that were happening in the Poconos. Those are moving forward. That's what we want to do. We want to provide information that is relevant to you in the area that you're in. And when you are in development, you are blessed to have a wonderful communications director because they go hand in hand. And Lee Martinez is our communications director, and she is focusing on I'm sorry, next slide, please. We can do that. She's focusing on our brand awareness and being able to bring PennFuture out to the forefront. You probably did receive that sticker in your year-end letter: clean air, pure water, your rights, protect them. Put it on your water bottle, put it on your house, put it everywhere so that everybody knows that you are a member of PennFuture. Last year, we had 16 feature stories written about PennFuture. Our comms director will tell you that that matters the most. Features are whole articles or TV news segments just about the work of PennFuture. Donna's Economic Development Report had a 2-page article on it in Penn's Capital Star, and Bridget's resources for community members to get involved in warehouse development earned features in Lehigh Valley News, Morning Call, and WFMZ TV. We also are working in collaboration with many of our partners to produce reports and resources that not only are we publishing ourselves, but we are collaborating with other organizations and community groups throughout Pennsylvania. And you remember last Friday, we drafted a sign-on letter criticizing Governor Shapiro's Get It Done plan and offering tangible policy solutions. Our outreach led to over 100 elected officials signing on to the letter, and we also amplified their voices on social media, creating slides from the quotes that they all provided, and this was picked up by 4 different news outlets too. So we're happy that we are partnering with it in that effort and getting our name out there. So moving forward, when I look at this and I saw the poll and I almost jumped with joy off of my seat, that clean energy and renewable energy was one of the top things that you guys were interested in. So we are having an energy dialogue event in June of 2025 in Pittsburgh. And I'll give you a little teaser. If you're from Pittsburgh, where I am currently, it's at Phipps Conservatory. So that is a wonderful, wonderful venue. So not only will you get some great dialogue on energy, you will also get some great floral for your viewing pleasure. And as everyone said, we are expanding our team, which we are so excited about. We have new reports on our policy briefs, and we're continuing education and just working in the community to get PennFuture out there. And there's more to come. Next slide, please. And of course, I wouldn't be a development director if I didn't talk about money. So as you see, PennFuture, when you support PennFuture, we are an organization which provides solutions through our campaigns, policy, and legal work. Why PennFuture? Because we are in a unique position to fight for all of our environmental rights with policy and legal change. Thank you for your continued support. And if you would like to provide additional support, please scan the QR code on the screen. And what I will say is we are not only funded by members like you, however, we are also funded by restricted funds. And what I will say is, as a development director, it makes me very pleased when I can give Abby a certain amount of money that is not restricted. So she can go and she can fight polluters. So we are happy about that. Please be on the lookout for all the things that we're doing, and please continue to support us. And thank you for being on our webinar. And Patrick, I think I'm going to pass it on to you so we can wrap this up.
Thank you. And if you haven't already, please do drop your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We do have some questions that have come in both through the chat and the QA. Start going through some of these. We got a question. How do you imagine President Trump's policies will affect PA renewable energy priorities? Honestly, I think my staff always makes fun of me because I tend to be glass half full more than glass half empty. So, frankly, a lot of the state's approach to renewable energy under the prior administration was simply saying we're going to spend the federal money coming our way. Well, that's not going to be the answer anymore. So I think it gives us a lot of room to work in the state house, in the governor's office, and communities across the state to make sure we're not simply relying on IRA or federal tax credits, but are making sure the state's skin is really in the game in terms of moving things forward. I should also, I guess, just point out that it's some of where the new administration is going to go is unclear. There are things beyond renewable energy we're involved with that, frankly, we were just talking about a couple hours ago, like hydrogen, where there was hydrogen hub money that we were looking at opposition and elements that we wanted to make sure we're done right, make sure it's clean, truly clean hydrogen and not dirty hydrogen. And they canceled the initial scoping meeting, public meeting that they were going to have in Pennsylvania. That was supposed to be yesterday, in fact. So it's a little unclear what's happening with the hydrogen hubs right now, as one example. So I'm sure there'll be more to come. There'll be more executive orders. There'll be more of all of that in the coming days, weeks, months. The last thing I'd say on that is there is, I think the new Interior Secretary, as an example, is someone who comes from fossil fuel interests, but also comes from being the governor of a state that North Dakota that is heavily reliant on wind energy, as an example. So it may not all be monolithic. There may be some places, again, that we can play within, but 2 weeks in, it's too early to tell how much space there'll be at the federal level for us to really push on some of these things. Next question, to what extent is federal withdrawal of funding for equity and justice programs affecting PA programs? Again, we're early stage on this. I will give the anecdotal element to it, which is, I certainly have friends who work in defense industry, for example, who are seeing and feeling the DEI information being wiped from websites. But in terms of like DEP's environmental justice programs and things like that, I don't know how big an effect that will have on them. I think a lot of their funding is state related at this point. Just want to ask, I don't know if anybody else on the team has anything to add. Making
I
sure.
would just quickly add that, as I think is evident in a lot of these pieces, it just speaks even more to local, of course, to state action, but also to local action. And wanted to highlight a couple of really great wins, especially in the cities of Allentown and Bethlehem, who just hired full-time sustainability coordinators and managers, Veronica in Allentown and Sarah in Bethlehem. And we had helped drive the force to make that happen. And so I just wanted to highlight that this, I know it can feel really, there's plenty of words to add here, but depressing and alarming to watch what's happening at the federal level, but a lot of people are stepping up at the state and local level to fill in that gap.
And I'll just add from our perspective on the legal front, I think for a long time, we've kind of relied on that federal backstop to push Pennsylvania forward as far as regulations and laws are concerned. And thinking about environmental justice, I think what we really are going to be focusing on over the next couple of years, hopefully not much longer, is really um, shoring up uh, our protections and shoring up our communities and ensuring that our legislature and our courts and our local governments are doing everything that they can under the Environmental Rights Amendment, under the amazing um, Clean Streams Law and Clean Air Act laws that we have here in Pennsylvania and more, that we're really pushing the state level protections because we know that we can secure those.
And and just to add to what Abby had said too, even though we are really focusing on the state and local levels to kind of lead that way, we are still involved with a lot of federal coalitions like the Climate Action Campaign, and Reimagine Appalachia and the Southwestern PA Municipal Hub, to kind of monitor and watchdog how that funding is going to be pulled back or moving forward or protected. And that's when action alerts and will definitely send and hit your inboxes if action is needed on the federal level. So we're not completely dropping that piece, of course. We're still very much involved in those coalitions. So we'll definitely keep folks updated when we see something to comment on.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for adding. That was uh, super helpful and connecting. I love the Allentown, as someone who spent some time in Allentown, Bethlehem, I love the fact that they're leading on that. Um, Sort of related, how do you expect EJ, especially in rural areas, to be pursued by PADEP and the governor, especially since Trump is disposing of all things EJ, environmental justice? Um, I will say I'll go back to pointing to, well, one, they've done an expansion of the Environmental Justice Office at DEP. They now have a deputy secretary position, so they have centered it incredibly well there as a starting point. But going back to that lightning plan, one of the interesting things, and again, to be frank, we don't have the details on it yet, that we're digging into, something that was just announced. But they have something they're calling community energy, and they specifically highlight the need to bring clean energy solutions to rural areas of the state, to agriculture in those areas. So, um, uh, rural is something I think we are focused on and interested in. It seems like the governor's office is there, so we're pushing very much on that. Again, I don't know anybody else. Just want to make sure. Anything to add?
I think, like Annie mentioned, like the Reimagine Appalachia Coalition, um, and Annie can help fill in the what Black stands for, and other partners across the state really working to fill in those gaps.
Yeah, the Black Appalachian Coalition is phenomenal. Let's see. Does PennFuture work with any state agencies on wildlife and habitat preservation? Also, what is the other organization that PennFuture occasionally partners with on projects, webinars? And I'll answer the first part and then I'll combine the second with a question we actually got prior to even the webinar starting about some of our partners. So in terms of work with state agencies, yes. And in fact, I know I've been talking with, well, take a step back. We're actually the affiliate for the state for the National Wildlife Federation. Um, uh, If you look at the affiliates across the country, they tend to run the gamut. It's anything from traditional hunting, fishing kind of interests to the National Aquarium in Baltimore, is the Maryland one, to us here in Pennsylvania, really focused on climate, on water, on those kinds of issues. But we've been working, I've been participating on a work group through Wildlife Federation, for example, again, bringing it back to something we just talked about, on how do we diversify the boards at the Fish and Boat Commission, at the Game Commission. Been working with Fish and Boat in particular, who has a great interest in this topic, and it's something that the National Wildlife Federation has been very focused on as well. In terms of wildlife and habitat preservation, my answer is yes. We usually come at it from the water end of things in terms of making sure we're protecting forested lands, those upstream areas that are so critical to habitat, but also to clean water, flood mitigation, all of those issues that provide really good habitat. I'll point out again something Fish and Boat Commission has been working on, and we're starting to talk. I'm starting to talk with them about. They here in Harrisburg at their headquarters actually put in a watershed restoration flood mitigation project behind their building, and that reconstruction, it was, I think when I was at DP, it was the last thing I cut the ribbon on before I left. Well, I talked to them the other day, and they now have bald eagles. Like here in Harrisburg, we have a bald eagle nesting or coming in to visit in this wildlife area, and other agencies are starting to pick that up as something they want to engage in and do, which talking with Tim Schaefer there about how we can support. So lots of good information and pieces going on there. In terms of the other organizations we work with a number, and some of the one, yeah, there's so many. I see Justin. Some of it local, some of it statewide, some of it national. We do a lot of work with the Clean Air Council. We do a lot of work with Sierra Club of Pennsylvania, Penn Environment, a lot of local groups through Reimagine Appalachia. We lead coalitions in the Delaware River Basin and in the Susquehanna River Basin on water issues in particular. So there's a lot of groups that we work with. I don't know, Abby, if there's any in particular on the legal side you wanted to highlight.
Yeah, thanks. You already mentioned Clean Air Council and Delaware Riverkeeper Network. Those are some of our trusted legal partners, especially on the environmental rights amendment front. I think, Green Amendments for the Generation. It's also Maya Van Rossem's organization. Then out west, we work closely with Clean Air Council on Environmental Integrity Project to EIP. Many of you probably know. And we've really formed a really tight-knit group of partners in these environmental organizations so that we can do more with what we have. And we really are, I think, a legal force to be reckoned with, even though there's about 3 or 4 groups across the state that do this kind of work.
Very good. Anybody else on that one?
It would take too much time. It would take
Yeah, to list them all.
And I'll just give it a shout out because I'm recognizing a lot of names on this call tonight. But have been a lot of kind of like grassroots groups joining PennFuture that are forming around our issues that are kind of being educated and being empowered by the work that we're doing, and kind of like taking those reins in many cases so that it's kind of like our influence is greater because of all of you who are standing up and rising up. And I just wanted to, again, thank you all for the work that you're doing that supports our work and makes us more impactful.
Here. Thank you for that. Trying to go through, get some different types. Distribution centers are a threat to Pocono clean waters. Grateful to PennFuture's help to counter the threat. How much of a threat do you see data centers are in PA? Um, I'm going to go to Abby on this one because I know she and Rob have done a lot of work on it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think data centers, as far as water quality issues and land use impacts and just cutting down forests and stuff, they share very similar impacts that our distribution centers do. Um, but I think one and some other things that they don't, water withdrawals for cooling is something that we're kind of looking at, and other partners are looking at more closely. I think for us, our main concern about data centers is the energy draw that they could be adding to the grid mix, and just somebody had a question about PJM, I know. So it's I think it's both very local. It's going to have a hyper local impacts, water, noise, possibly, but it's also going to have that statewide impact that I think PennFuture is going to be looking at both angles.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is we're pursuing, beyond the guide and the court cases that we've already done, we're pursuing some legislation around. I know one of the things that frustrates people is these things get built and they have a huge flat roof, how many football fields long, and they're basically built as glorified sheds that can't support anything on the roof. So requiring solar ready development, we have a lot of interest in the legislature around that for distribution centers. And we've also pivoted that to start talking about it in the context of data centers as well. Um, Part of a lot of the focus there is making sure the centers are, to the extent they're drawing energy, that is additive, and that is clean. And if people may have heard there was a proposal in at Susquehanna Electric Station, a nuclear power plant, to build co-locate a data center there that was actually rejected by the federal government um, because of the impact it would have on the grid. So again, additive, clean is what we're looking for as we build these things out. You mentioned, and it might be the last thing we can get to here, the PJM grid. Will they ever get through the backlog, favoring fossil fuel projects unfairly? Shapiro's recent action, which was reaching a settlement that needs to be approved yet, but to reduce costs. Could PA leave PJM if things don't improve? Would that be a very difficult step? Lot to answer there. The biggest thing I'd say is one, I think for what the governor's legal action was, it was effective, and the effectiveness of that was a short-term capping of electricity prices actually next year. There was a capacity market that happened last year. That means in July of this year, your prices are going to go up about $15 a month. Um, the governor's action is for the upcoming auction, which will impact prices next July. So to the extent that it's going to keep prices down, they'll still go up a little bit, but not nearly the rate they would have. That was effective. There's still a lot of work that needs to get done on the grid. Still a lot of work to get through that backlog of electrical projects. And the stance we are taking, and you'll be seeing some more communication in the coming weeks on this, is that to the extent the legislature and others want to focus on natural gas, you are talking it, even if you wanted to grant it as a good solution, which is it is not, but even if you wanted to do that, it's 5 years away. You're not going to build any of these plants tomorrow. Solar, you can build it almost immediately. Solar behind the meter, you can build immediately. Energy efficiency and demand response, those are things you can do immediately that are truly ways to not just improve the environment, deal with climate change, but they also address the electric rates that we're currently seeing hit people's pocketbooks. So you may be seeing me ask questions in public now about things like why do politicians want your energy bills to go up? Which is kind of the stance that they are taking on all of this. Anyone else want to add to that?
I just dropped in the chat, but yeah, like Pat said, more to come. We'll have more offerings and more actions on this for sure.
And there's a bunch of other questions we just did not have time to get to. We'll capture this and try to get back to folks individually on some of this. Maybe even schedule some calls, but just thank you for everyone dropping things into the Q&A. Jess, you want to? Okay, so what can you do? And I wasn't going to say this, but given the nature of some of the questions and some of where we went, I'll just say two things I say all the time, which is one, if we're looking at fuel for our work as opposed to our grid, things like anger, frustration, sadness are fuels that burn hot and they burn out immediately. Hope is what we hope to provide as an organization in the work that we do. And hope is a fuel that is long lasting and can be endlessly renewable if we're doing it right. So want to make sure we are leaving you all with hope, and also want to reflect that back. Again, a thing I've heard many times in many contexts, I forget exactly where it comes from, but is we, PennFuture, and you all on this are the ones we have been waiting for to deal with this, to deal with these issues. So invite you all to continue to join us as we are in the fights, as we're coming up with the solutions, as we're pushing things forward within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Some things you can do, social media. We all are obeying the algorithms at this point, right? So if you read something on our social media, like it, interact with it, comment on it, share it. Please make sure you're amplifying the message because that is the way that it gets seen more. As was said earlier, be on the lookout. We'll be sending out a membership survey in email sometime in the near future here. So please do. We want to make sure we're hearing from you what issues are on your mind, what things we can address. And then the last is invite three, and don't feel limited by the three number there necessarily, but three families and friends to join us in this. Share information, say, hey, look, these folks are doing good work in our community, in our state, in our country, in our world, to really address climate, to address air quality, to address water. And we would love to welcome them into the fold of action takers and supporters that we have here at the organization. Do want to just thank everybody for their time, attention, and their ongoing support of the organization. It truly does mean the world to all of us, and I would say to my family, my children, who are always very proud of the fact that we're in this fight and that continue to go after it. So it's all about not just us, but the next generations. So thank you so much. Thank you for all that you're all doing for us, and we'll be in touch in the near future.